Well, hello and welcome. I'm Alex McHugh here. I'm going to share a little bit about my instructional unit and a lesson plan that I prepared and instructed for a third grade class in Delaware, Ohio. This lesson took place at Urban Carlisle Elementary School in a third grade classroom. The school's enrollment is 579 students, with a percentage of students receiving free or reduced lunches at around 20%. The school is predominantly suburban and white Caucasian. This was a third grade general ed classroom. All 19 students in the classroom were fluent English proficient. The class had 6 students considered at risk in reading. There were 2 students diagnosed intellectually disabled and 1 student with an other health impairment. This lesson plan took place in a third grade classroom, the subject of math, on January 26, 2017. The content standard that was covered in this math class states, represent a fraction 1 over b on a number line diagram by defining the interval from 1 to 0, from 0 to 1 as the whole and partitioning it into b equal parts. Recognize that each part has size 1 over b, and that the endpoint of the part based at 0 locates the number 1 over b on the number line. The students had previously learned about whole numbers on a number line, but we were going to dive more into what it means for a number line to have fractions. The goal was at the end of a 10 to 15 minute small group lesson, each student will complete a fraction number line and exercise learning how to identify its of the whole, fractions, and mixed numbers. As the lesson began, students were split up into 3 small groups. Each lesson was going to take place 3 times, respectively, with each group. We started off with I can statements, how the students were going to learn how to represent a fraction on a number line. I considered differentiation as I prepared this lesson plan to give both visual and audible instructions, to use a smartboard to show instructions. I started by explaining to the students that we had learned about numbers on a number line, but specifically with whole numbers. And so I passed out slips of paper explaining that each piece of paper represented a whole number, 0 to 1, but that then we were going to fold the paper in order to make fractions. Students would then draw a number line across the paper, label it from 1 to 0, and as we folded, we were going to write the fractions that represent each fold. We folded the paper in half, therefore the crease that was made by folding represented 1/2 on the number line. We then folded the paper in half again and labeled the folds 1/4 and 3/4, but we also had to label the center line again as 2/4, which is an equivalent fraction for 1/2. I demonstrated the folding activity on the smartboard. At the end of the lesson, we talked about how each crease represented a fraction on the number line. We also talked about what it means for fractions to be equivalent fractions. Students, after completing this assignment, were rotated, given a worksheet, and the next small group lesson began. To assess this, formative assessment included monitoring the class and the small groups, questioning the students, and providing feedback throughout the lesson. The small worksheets given to review the fractions on a number line also functioned as formative assessment. This lesson was a part of a unit involving fractions and fractions on a number line. A unit assessment will be given and was given multiple days after this lesson. The summative assessment took approximately 45 to 60 minutes and was given via Chromebooks in the classroom. In reflecting upon this lesson, one of the changes I would have made was to not use the smartboard as much, but rather use a whiteboard or the whiteboard function on the smartboard. The projector seemed to get in the way, and I had to fidget around with my own piece of paper when I could have just drawn on the whiteboard to show and represent the fractions on a number line. This also allowed me to stand up, or would have allowed me to stand up and engage the students much easier while monitoring the rest of the class and asking questions. All in all, the lesson went great. The students seemed to understand via formative assessment the beginning stages of representing fractions on a number line. Thanks for listening. Have a great day.